What's up, friends? Mike here from Mercado Airwaves. If you missed any one of our past interviews with amazing guests like future Hall of Famer and pound for pound best fighter in the world, UFC flyweight champion Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson,
another day at the office, I get to go out there and test my skill.
to award-winning producer, director, and actor Orlando Jones,
Orlando, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, sir. I'm good, brother. How you doing?
and all the other interesting guests we've had on. Joining us today is director and writer David Ferrier.
Thanks so much, brother. I appreciate you having me on the show.
MMA legend Chael Sonnen joins us today.
Keep listening to your show. This is great. Thanks, my friend.
Just subscribe to us on iTunes at Mercado Airwaves. And while you're there, please like, review, and rate us, friends. It helps so much. We also have a Patreon for anyone who would like to support the show. Just visit us at patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves and see how you can get all of our interviews ad-free and before anyone else, and how you can get your business or company spotlighted on the show. Follow us on Twitter at mmercado2333. Like us on Facebook at Mercado Airwaves. Subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/MikeMercado2333. And if you would like to see what we're up to behind the scenes, follow us on Instagram, MikeMercado2333. Thanks for listening and all the support.
If you would like to support Mercado Airwaves, visit us at patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves. Find us on iTunes at Mercado Airwaves. Keep up to date with the show on Facebook at Mercado Airwaves. You can see all of Nicole's work at typingwhentipsy.wordpress.com. You can follow Alex on Twitter at Mercado21Alex. Follow Mike on Twitter at mmercado2333 and on Instagram, MikeMercado2333.
I am a liar. That's what my interrogator tells me when he comes to my cell every morning. I am a murderer, a killer of innocence, a destroyer of cities and towns and people. My interrogator tells me these things too, but I don't believe any of it. If I can't remember doing those things, I must not have done them, or at least that's my philosophy. It's been 25 weeks since I've seen the sun. That's 175 days since I felt its warm rays against my olive brown skin. Since I heard the sweet lilting sound of a bird gliding along a warm summer breeze. That's almost 6 months of counting the minutes in my head, of breathing the seconds of each day, of reflecting on what I'm stuck doing between these four metallic walls and the ever-present eyes that watch me from the other side. What's worse is that in all this time, I still haven't figured out why I'm here. I can't seem to remember. It's as if that person I once was, the one who does deserve all of this, the mirrored walls, the suffocating silence, the shock of electricity piercing my skin, it's as if she's not here anymore. It's because I can't remember these things that makes me most afraid of what my interrogator tells me. Deep down, I think there's a part of me that knows his words hold some truth. That, like he says, I am a monster, and I belong here. It's an excerpt from Prince of Dreams by Nicolette Elzie. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to another episode of Typing When Tipsy. My name is Nicole Mancha, and I am so excited for my guest this morning. She's a writer, a blogger, an author, a mom. She does it all. My friend, Nicolette Elzie.
Oh my goodness, thank you. That is such an introduction. I don't feel worthy of it. Thank you so much for
introduction for being up and ready to go at this time.
Wow. I actually tried something new this morning and got up even earlier than usual. I looked up some, it was called sleep time, sleepti.me. So, and you what it does is you set the time that you want to wake up, and it will tell you what time you should be going to bed, you should be going to sleep by, and it will determine what your what sleep cycle, so that way you're waking up between sleep cycles. And I thought, hey, this is an excellent idea, so that way I'm not always waking up so groggy.
That's my biggest problem.
Yes, and the same for me. I always try to wake up between 5:30 and 6, so that way I have a little bit of me time in the morning before my kids because I have two. I have a 4-year-old and now 7-year-old, and I'm like, oh my goodness, how did I get so old? She turned 7 this past Friday, and I'm not that old. I'm 28. I sound like a 13-year-old though. So if your viewers are wondering, oh my goodness, why does she sound like she is 13 years old and she has 2 kids? What's going on? I know I have a really high pitched voice. So
what's your daughter's name?
Her name is Audrey Rose. I had her.
Birthday, Audrey Rose.
She's 7 going on 17. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah,
She's a first grader. She knows everything about everything.
They always do.
They always do.
I have 8 nieces and nephews, and more than half of them have gone into like the preteen stage, and they're just all a joy.
It's amazing. It's a good age, and all the ages are really good because there's always new things that come with it, and so it's been sweet seeing her develop. Because she's my first. I had her when I was 21. I was still in college at the time. I went to the University of Southern California in Los Angeles, so I was a super senior at the time. I had to take an extra semester because I started when I started SC, I started as an aerospace engineer major, actually.
Oh, that's a big left turn.
Yes, I did, and I didn't switch until my second semester of my junior year. It took there's some real problem with my stubbornness that it took me that long to realize I can't do this.
And what really made you do that turn? Like, what finally made you go, okay, this is not what I want to do?
I was sick and tired of failing. I went through my entire academic career up until, going to college as the superstar, so always getting straight A's, always excelling, always being above and beyond, head and shoulders above everybody else in the class. And so as soon as I got to SC, and really it wasn't any of the other classes except my engineering classes. So it was physics. I did fine in our calculus class because I'd taken calculus before, but it was the physics. It was the aero classes. It was Bernoulli equations and Gauss's law and all these things. And I was like, what are you talking about? What do you mean I'm supposed to know this? I've never been exposed to this. And my dad, he's an aircraft mechanic. So I thought I knew something, a thing or two, but I didn't. I knew nothing. And I didn't know anything because I never bothered my dad. He was in the Air Force for 26 years growing up. And he was TDY a lot, so he was temporary deployment a lot when I was growing up. And so when he would come home, and he also saw a lot when he was out, because when the planes would go out, he just saw a lot. I don't really know the details of it, but I know that he suffers from post-traumatic stress. And so I wouldn't really want to bother him too much, because when he was out in his garage, I knew that was his place to kind of decompress and kind of get back to himself. That was his happy space. And so I didn't want to be there and bother him, and unless he was inviting me, then I didn't really want to be that bother to him. So I definitely grew up with some issues of that, of having to feel like a burden on not just him but on other people.
Right.
And so I ended up, and that is actually something I write about in my story. I definitely bring those kinds of issues into my writing, is things that I grew up with. So that's why I kind of just mentioned that, is that anything that we experience in our lives, they're all, I don't want to say fodder, but they're definitely all ripe for the picking for what we write on and about. And even if they're painful, they're important, to bring up. So, but as far as the taking that turn at SC, I was just so tired of failing. It really brought down my confidence as a person, for it to fail for that long. And I wasn't failing. I was getting C's.
But it feels like that when you're
But
used to
it
getting
feels
A's.
that way.
Yeah.
Yes, it does. It really does. It's demoralizing. I had struggled with mental health ever since I was 13. I had made my first attempt at suicide when I was 13, and so struggling with those issues for that long, I had just fallen into a very deep depression, and failing in that way and disappointing my parents for that long didn't help. I mean, they didn't understand why their star student would suddenly, to them in their eyes, be struggling so much. And I kept arguing for switching into the creative writing program. I told them that, that was my passion. That's what I wanted to do instead. They argued that if I pursued writing, that I would be essentially what they call the starving artist, and I wouldn't succeed.
We have some more stuff in common.
Yeah. And that's just, it's not encouraging when you get told that your passion is the equivalent of failure. Yet when what you're pursuing is making you feel like a failure. So your options are, okay, failure or more failure. And at such a young age, it's so hard to make the right decision.
I argue this all the time. No 18-year-old should be making these decisions.
No, and I agree with that. It's too much. I feel so bad for our college students and our young adults that are going into these, facing the political climate that they're facing now, having to make these huge decisions now, not receiving the support that they should be receiving. Goodness gracious, they just have everything stacked up against them.
Yeah. And that was something I noticed when I started the MFA program, is that you and I are some of the younger batch that's in there. We have a lot of students who are, probably about 10 years our senior. And, it's because we're all going back to school because we actually want to do what we want to do. Because my situation was similar in the sense that my parents, my mom is a nurse and my dad is a cop. So my mom is super factual. That's her brain. She only understands what she understands, kinds of things. And she loves to read and do that kind of stuff, but I don't think she ever really considered that being having a child like me who is very in touch. I'm super in touch emotionally. I'm very vocal. She was like, you would just be dramatic. And I'm like, because that's how I speak. That's how I express myself. And I was glad that my mom came from a very strict and conservative background, because she actually did not do that with us. She wanted us to be she tells us I love you 1,000 times a day. You know what I mean? She wanted to make sure that we had it a little bit differently, because her life was very different growing up. So we've always known that her parents loved us, but it wasn't said as often. My mom moved here from Germany when she was 9. So it's just and she was from a single parent household, which was very rare. There was 4 of them. She was the oldest. So she kind of had to take on that other adult role. So she wanted to make sure we actually got to be kids and grow up like kids. And unfortunately, we did. My brother is very into math, my younger brother. We grew up together most of the time because our older brothers are much older. And I was very artistic and creative, and I wanted to read all day. The rules at our table were, Nicole, you cannot bring books and read at dinner. That was the rule. But when I went into college, I think she had kind of given up in the argument of what I wanted to do. And so I was I'm doing creative writing. That's what I'm doing. I got accepted to the school, and then they dropped the program. So I was devastated. And they were like, well, you can do English. And I'm like, you realize it's not the same thing.
It's not the same.
It's very, very different. And trying to explain that to people, I feel like is pulling teeth sometimes, because they're like, it's the same. No, my creative writing has there are so less rules and other weird rules that go along with it. And English is just very structured. And that's not what I'm looking for. So I ended up doing anthropology, which I did okay in. I didn't do great. I did okay. And I got to do some really cool stuff. I got to travel to Greece and the Bahamas and do archaeology digs, because if I was going to do anything, I was going to do something cool at least.
Right. Yeah. And then do something to expand yourself.
Right. Yeah. And it wasn't until last year when I was like, I really just want to go back into creative writing. And I know you don't have to get your MFA to write a book, but I needed people. I think it was more to get people who knew what I love to do and love to do it as well, and be able to have that just kind of creative backboard to bounce ideas off of, because I felt like that's a lot of what I was lacking in my everyday life.
Yeah, absolutely. That resonates with me, because when I came into the MFA program, I had already written Prince of Dreams.
Right.
And I had started working on it in March of 2015, and I had finished it, and I had been rewriting it and scrapping it and doing terrible things to it and throwing it in the trash. And I mean, so many versions of this book have been trashed, and it's been restarted so many times that I don't even remember anymore. I've seen early drafts of it, and I don't even remember. I can remember writing that first draft, and to see the permutations of it. It's actually quite amazing to see how far we can bring our writing to the different levels. The growth is, I guess, what I'm getting at, and also to see that the more we put into our work, the original idea that we had for it eventually comes to fruition. Whether or not we realized it's that we've arrived, I guess, at the destination. At some point we do. And seeing that from draft 1 to whatever draft I'm at, let's call it draft 40.
Yeah.
Which my husband says it's draft 40. He says he's been keeping count and it's draft 40. I'm saying it's more like draft 20, and he says I'm high. So I'm going to go with his count because he's the math guy and he's probably right and I'm probably wrong. So call it draft 40. Anyways, he says it's 40. Anyway, but going from draft 1 to draft 40 and seeing that the story that I've been trying to write, essentially for the past 3 years, is finally here. There's so much gratification and satisfaction in that. Seeing all the growth, all the pain and suffering that has had to happen in order to get there, and to see that it's arrived. There's so much just self-satisfaction in that. Starting the MFA program, I had already been through a lot of that process of writing the book and going through most of that journey. Right. But I had, just before beginning the program, I had lost my job at the local university here. I was a writing specialist, so I actually had this amazing job to teach writing to students. I taught writing to undergrads and to graduate students, which was kind of a fluke because to get the job, you had to have a master's degree. But because they saw that I had a undergraduate degree from such a top-notch university like SC, they were like, "Yeah, you can do this." And so they're like, "Yeah," they're like, "You can do this." They're like, "Yeah, let's bring you on." And so I missed being called Dr. Elzie. They had this thing at this college, which was so cool because I've never been to a university where they called people who held a PhD doctor. But they did it at this school. So they would come into my office and say, "Dr. Elzie, I need this," and I'd be like, "Yes, please call me Dr. Elzie." Sure. I'd be like such a glutton for this title. Life isn't about titles, but it would be so silly. I'd come home to my husband and I'd be like, "Babe, they called me doctor again." And he'd be like, "You're so silly."
Oh, no, I feel the same way. I told my parents, if I ever get a PhD, don't even refer to me as anything except for doctor. Every family party we go to, that's all I want you to call me. I won't actually respond for anything else.
I am Dr. Mancha. That is, or it's so, I love it. I loved it. I missed it. But it did shatter my soul a little bit to lose my job, not just because it wasn't just a financial blow, because I was the primary breadwinner at the time. My family relied on my paycheck, but it was a blow to my very vocation. I love doing it. I love to see students who had zero confidence in what they wrote, and seeing them, helping them see that they have promise and potential, and that all they needed was one person to tell them that they could do it, and see them grow and see them come back. I mean, I would get some people who would come in there and they would have the worst attitudes because they were forced to come. Of course. And they would have the worst attitudes. And I always had a different, I would change up my routine. So typically I'm just a very positive, happy, encouraging person. But if I received a student who was going to give me attitude, I gave it right back to them because I knew that there was no way that my typical demeanor was going to get through to them.
No, they would think you were a doormat, that they were just going to like finish
exactly
that they're on.
Yes, exactly. So what I'm about to say isn't my standard approach, but if they came at me with attitude, I gave it right back to them. So they'd come in, and I could tell that they were just not happy. They were there for, you know, they were angry. They're pissed.
Yeah.
And so I said, hey, look, you know, you don't want to be here? I don't care. They would give me this look, and these are young kids, you know, so they're probably 18, 19, 20, even 21.
Yeah.
And at the time I was, so this is 2015, so I'm just a couple years older than them.
Sure.
And they know that, but they're still calling me doctor, so they're super confused, and they're just like, wait, like, you're super young, but you have a PhD, so I have to respect you, but I don't know. And so they're confused out of their minds. And I'm telling them, look, I don't care. I'm like, hey, I will sign your little paper here, and you can go back to your professor, and you can say, hey, I got my stuff looked at, and I'm good to go. I said, you can do that because what does it matter to me if you know how to write this or not? I still get paid.
Right.
Your F in your class matters to me absolutely nothing. Exactly. I said, however, I am more than happy to help you go from an F to a C and take that C to a B and take that B to an A because I know that you can do better than that. And you know you can do better than that. But it's up to you.
And I feel like
so if you want to work, then we can work. And if not, then what do I care? I still get paid.
Exactly.
Your tuition is paying my paycheck right here. So I can sit here and do nothing and read my book, and you can get out of my office. Or we can work. And they would look at me, and to challenge them, they actually loved it. Mm-hmm. The ones who had a bad attitude, they loved it. And they were the ones who came back most religiously.
Oh, I bet.
And they were the ones that had the most improvement. And so I miss doing that, you know. For people who had no confidence, who had such a bad attitude, they would be the ones who had the most improvement, who were the best writers, because they had something to say, but nobody had ever challenged them. Right. No one had ever checked them.
And that's what I feel like has always been different, in my opinion, about writing than any other subject or topic, is that people who come in and, you know, they're like, well, I just don't do well in these classes because I'm not a good writer, or I don't do this well, or whatever it is. And it's like, well, you speak every day, right? Mm-hmm. So you have something to say.
You have something to say. Everyone has a voice.
Exactly. And I feel like that's what takes writing out, for me anyways, is that it's so different from every other subject out there. Because for math, you need to know equations. And some people, like, I truly just don't understand them. I've tried. I went to tutoring all through high school, my senior year, my junior year, and I think a piece of my sophomore year too. And I still, like, barely got a C. And I went religiously, mostly because I was forced to. But,
yes,
but I barely got out of there with the skin of my teeth. You know what I mean? Like, and,
absolutely.
And I'm more of a retainer, where I will shove a bunch of crap into my brain just to take the test and then lose it the second I walk out. And
yes.
With writing, I've always felt like it was very different, because I'm like, if you have a story to say, if you speak to your friends on a daily basis, or your parents or whoever, you can write. You may not do it well, but that's why we have all these people to help you with your grammar and spell check. And now there are all these, like, amazing apps that can do that for you. Like, for me, I've just, at this point, I feel like there's no reason for you not to write, because you have so much happening in your life every single day. And you may think it's boring, but guess what? Someone else has a completely different day than you do. So for them, it's interesting. That's why people read memoirs.
Mm-hmm.
So
exactly.
But I can't. I mean, that to me, you know, being a writing specialist, that just seems like the job. I just don't want to do anything else.
Yeah, it was the dream job. It was fun. You know, like you said, it was it. It was like the pinnacle.
Yeah.
And so when I started the MFA, I came into it thinking, okay, if I do this, I can get a job like this again, because like I said before, when I got the job, it was such a fluke. They required a master's, but they saw where I got my degree from. I rocked the interview, and they're like, yeah, you can do this. But when I was applying elsewhere, everything was requiring a PhD or the equivalent, and an MFA is the equivalent because it's the terminal degree in our field. So I was like, well, this is what I'm going to do because I apparently need legitimacy. And so I started off with, I'll admit, kind of like a bad attitude because I already felt like I knew everything I had to know, which is not the way to go into anything. But I didn't come into it feeling like I was going to gain much other than the benefit of being with other people who were in it for the purpose of writing. I didn't feel like I was going to learn anything from the program, but I did feel like I was going to meet people who loved writing as much as I did.
Yeah.
Which I have. I've met some amazing people. I've met you. I've met amazing professors. I've met amazing students.
Yeah.
But
Melissa
what's even better, Melissa, oh my gosh,
we can just gush about her for the next 20 minutes because
we
she's
can.
The most amazing. I'm actually going to have her on the podcast, I think, next week.
Oh my goodness.
She agreed to it, and I was like, oh my gosh, just let me fangirl over here on this side.
Let me fangirl with her. Oh, she is a special human.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I hope she listens to this and she just is like, oh my gosh, these girls.
Yes, I hope we make her blush with as much as we're gushing over her, because she is just truly phenomenal.
Yeah.
She was, in all of her, critiques, constantly she had wonderful things to say about everything. She was spot on about the things that was working and what wasn't working. And she had suggestions for improvement. I mean, there's no better way to critique a person than that. Yes. It's more than what you can ask for. And she's encouraging, enthusiastic, and it's everything that you could ask for in a professor, and a friend, and a critique partner. I mean, it's just, she takes it to another level.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I emailed her 17 times during the final because I kept reading into the directions. I was like, this can't be right. I must be reading this wrong. I'm pretty sure I emailed her 17 times, and every single time I emailed her, she emailed me back with such kindness and friendliness, and I'm like, I would have been like, please stop emailing me. Because I tend to read into things, and I felt like the directions were just so confusing, and I'm like, I'm just repeating this. And the best part about Melissa, she's like, you guys realize I didn't make this format, so if you have questions, A, ask me, B, don't be think you're offending me.
Yeah. Yes, I know. She was the sweetest when it came to that. Oh my goodness. I didn't email her about the final, but because I again, it's that concept of being a burden, a bothersome. So I genuinely struggle with feeling like I'm bothering people and burdening people, which I just have not grown out of that. I don't know if I ever will. It's just a struggle, and I genuinely hope that I will grow out of it someday. But
I'm sure it's all growth every day, and we're still young. I mean, I know we feel like adults because we have to pay bills, and you have kids, so
yes, exactly. I feel like I'm grown up now, but
I know,
like you said.
So, okay, how did you come up with the concept for Prince of Dreams?
Well, I guess in a way it really started when I was 11 years old. I had started back when I was 11. I became really obsessed with this idea that it wasn't fair that all the stories I was reading were coming from the perspective of the hero. Mm-hmm. I thought, gosh, what about the villain? They're kind of getting shafted. I didn't think that in my 11-year-old mind, they're getting shafted. That's kind of like a harsh term for an 11-year-old. But I did think it's not fair. what about them? Like, what's their story? And that's what started. I began with this obsession of what's their story. And so I got super obsessed at the ripe age of 11, which is so weird. But I got really obsessed with Arthurian legend, which is just random.
Okay.
And yeah, just let me go on this tangent real quick. And I got then obsessed with the character Morgan Le Fay.
Okay.
And I then began writing fan fiction, if you can call it that, of her story and how she essentially became this like super villain in all the like Arthurian lore.
Right.
And once I kind of like stopped that, so I wrote that for about 2, 3, 4 years, something like that. I didn't pick up really writing again in like that line of things. Like I dropped the fan fiction, went to college. They didn't, I remember turning it in. Like I remember turning in my first, I think 2 chapters or whatever of, I think it was called the Fata Morgana, so the Fate Morgan. I remember turning in the first 2 chapters of it, and I had done a whole bunch of different twists on it and stuff. So she was based in Egypt, and there was this whole different, perspective.
Sure.
And that's where she had come from, and it was cool. I still have a heart for it, but I probably will never bring it out into the light of day, just because it was an obsession. It started from an 11-year-old perspective, and there was a lot of messed up things that happened to this poor woman to get her to be this like supervillain. But it did, like, that obsession started off on this trajectory of like what happens, like how do people become what they are, and so anyways, but when I got to college, I got to SC, I turned it in, and learned very quickly early on that you essentially, at least in my creative writing program, you don't turn in fantasy. I learned that right away. My first creative writing workshop, you don't turn in fantasy. And I was shocked. I mean, I got ripped to shreds. And I was like so heartbroken because I was like, well, what about, I read Tamora Pierce growing up. I read Terry Goodkind. I read like all the the greats of big world building and super like elaborate high fantasy, and not to mention that it was like super westernized fantasy too. So I just wasn't like really aware that there was anything beyond that. I wasn't super well read at the time. And so I was just really shocked that my fantasy story of like the Egyptian Morgan Le Fay wouldn't be well received. And mind you, I'm like 17 years old at the time. Like I started college when I was 16 because I skipped my sophomore year in high school.
Okay.
So I was super, super young starting college. So I'm just like really immature as it is. So the whole critique process just really shattered me, and for that first time. And so after that, I just wrote contemporary pieces and did really well after that. And I didn't revisit fantasy again until 2015, which is sad.
Yeah.
So I was 25 years old. I wouldn't write fantasy again until I was 25.
And that was something I was so glad when we went into this program that they were very open about that, because I feel like a lot of, especially like our generation, mostly because we had, I wouldn't say that it was the best written book, but Harry Potter was amazing. I loved Harry Potter. I was
I loved it.
Of mine. But not the best written book, but something I think a lot of us read was Twilight, because it was at the perfect age for us. Like it was when we were teenagers and we're so emotional, and I'm like, say what you will. I'm like, but a lot of us have those relationships with these books because, we are that age. We are the perfect age. And for me, it's always been, I don't care what you're reading or what you're writing as long as you're doing it. And so when I did see a lot of that before we came into the MFA program, where people weren't super open about supernatural. And when I went to some writing classes, it was like, well, I write historical fiction. And I was like, wow, okay, you and I are just on very different levels here. And it was the critiques that, I would hear. It was like, well, it doesn't sound real. Well, it's not supposed to. Like,
Yeah.
There's a Wendigo in there, so
Yeah.
I would assume that we're not in the same world.
I would hope that he sounds fantastical and supernatural. He's a Wendigo.
Exactly. But like, it's things like that where when we came in, I was so relieved because they're so open to everything, and I'm like, writing is writing. I don't care what it is, and I'm sorry, but you know, people can say whatever they want, but at the end of the day, for me, it's like, if you are able to live as a writer by writing what you love, I don't care what it may be. Like,
I agree.
do
Absolutely.
what you need to do.
Yes. Love it. Yes, absolutely. At the end of most, hopefully all, but at the end of most of my blog posts, I like to end it with keep reading and keep writing.
Yes.
It doesn't say keep reading YA or keep writing YA. It's just keep reading, keep writing. That's it.
If you would like to support Mercado Airwaves, visit us at patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves. Find us on iTunes at Mercado Airwaves. Keep up to date with the show on Facebook at Mercado Airwaves. You can see all of Nicole's work at typingwhentipsy.wordpress.com. You can follow Alex on Twitter at Mercado21Alex. Follow Mike on Twitter at mmercado2333 and on Instagram, MikeMercado2333.
What's up, friends? Mike here from Mercado Airwaves. If you missed any one of our past interviews with amazing guests like future Hall of Famer and pound for pound best fighter in the world, UFC flyweight champion Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson,
Another day at the operator to go out there and test my skill.
to award-winning producer, director, and actor Orlando Jones. Orlando, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, sir. I'm good, brother. How you doing?
And all the other interesting guests we've had on. Joining us today is director and writer David Ferrier.
Thanks so much, brother. I appreciate you having me on the show.
MMA legend Chael Sonnen joins us today.
Keep listening to your show. This is great. Thanks, my friend.
Just subscribe to us on iTunes at Mercado Airwaves. And while you're there, please like, review, and rate us, friends. It helps so much. We also have a Patreon for anyone who would like to support the show. Just visit us at patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves and see how you can get all of our interviews ad-free and before anyone else, and how you can get your business or company spotlighted on the show. Follow us on Twitter at mmercado2333. Like us on Facebook at Mercado Airwaves. Subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/MikeMercado2333. And if you would like to see what we're up to behind the scenes, follow us on Instagram, MikeMercado2333. Thanks for listening and all the support.
And yours is a blend, right? It's a YA, like, speculative fiction blend?
Yeah, it's a science fiction fantasy blend.
Okay.
So, yeah, goodness, the permutations of that story. It's just the fact that it's gotten to where it is. I just love that it was always meant to be that way.
Yeah.
I actually plan to write a blog post on that soon about how it's the development of it. Hopefully it goes up sometime in the next week. But yeah, just the writing process, as long as we're doing it. I mean, to get stuck in a rut, that's something that I've been struggling with, mostly because, we've talked about this before about migraines. I've been dealing with them very chronically since February, getting 5 to 7 a week, so averaging between 20 to 30 a month. And I actually have one right now, but since I'm so used to having them, if we looked at the pain scale, I'm used to them hitting at about like a 7 or an 8 on the pain scale. Well, this one would probably be more like a 4.
I can't even imagine, we've talked about this. I have chronic migraines, but I have thankfully gotten them down to probably like 10 to 15 a month. And if I catch them really early, which I'm very lucky because I didn't realize that this didn't happen for everybody. And a lot of it's because who talks about migraines? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah.
I get a warning, so it'll start to irritate me, and I'll start to feel it above my eyebrows, and it's not a headache, and that's what people don't understand, is I'm like, no, it's not a headache, it's a sharp pain that I feel above my eyebrow, which is saying, hey, you're going to have a migraine if you don't take medicine right this second. So I do get about a 15-20 minute warning before I have to, find some medicine to shove down my throat. And it doesn't happen like that with everybody. There are several people I've spoken to, and they're like, no, it just hits me out of nowhere. And there's no warning. And then even if I take medicine, it may not kick in enough.
Yeah. I've been on I think a week-long, continuous one.
Oh.
No. So, but like I said, they've been really, minor. and they'll fade. It's been fading for a little bit with like Excedrin.
Yeah.
So, but it's nothing in comparison to what it was. I mean, like you said, nobody talks about migraines.
No.
I mean, they rarely do. And there's a huge stigma that comes with discussing migraines, very similar to mental health. I mean, people stigmatize these health issues as, as less than. You suffer from migraines, you suffer from depression or bipolar disorder, and suddenly, it's in your head. I can't tell you. It's actually sad, and I'm laughing, but I laugh at inappropriate times, so...
No, it's okay. So do I.
I think it's for me, humor is a way for me to cope. So, during this period of, I guess, what is it? It's February now. It's February. Started with the chronicness of my migraines.
Mm-hmm.
I've always had chronicness, but I guess the severe chronicness has really just ramped up since February. And we're now in October? So what is that? 6-7 months? I don't even know. I'm terrible at math, so don't ask me.
It's like 7-8 months. It's horrifying.
I've been told by not like more than a handful of people that maybe the pain is just in my head, and maybe I should see a psychologist.
Yeah, I've had a friend of mine who I adore, and she really does, she's very health conscious, so she does a lot of stuff, and she's like, if you meditate, it will help. And I'm not saying that it won't, but it's not going to make them go away. And I'm like, you've never had a migraine before. I'm like, I can tell you right now, you've never had a migraine, because you literally feel like you just want someone to take a gun and blow your brains out, because it is so painful that you can't function in life. The first time I got a migraine when Mike and I moved in together, we started dating and moved in together within 4 months. So
yeah, if you were to hear my story with my husband, you'd be like, okay, he's crazy.
So it was 4 months, and we're in our first apartment, and I get a migraine, and he's never seen me with a migraine, and I literally just shut all the lights off. I'm under the blanket, and he's like, are you okay? I'm like, please don't talk to me. Please don't touch me. Please don't talk to me. I'm super light sensitive. I'm smell sensitive. I'm touch sensitive. I don't get an aura, thankfully, but I do have all of those other things. So I love coffee. I could live on it. Just stick it in my vein and let's go. When I have a migraine, the smell of coffee makes me want to throw up. I can't handle smells at all. So he was like, I've never seen anything that awful. And I'm like, it is the most painful thing, because it's in your brain. I'm like, that's what people don't understand. It's in your brain where you have
it's in your function.
Brain.
Yes.
Oh, that's awful.
It is. It absolutely is, and people can't see the pain. So if they can't see the pain, it's not there. I don't know who I've said this to. I can't remember. I probably said it to too many people. But if it were cancer, people wouldn't look at me or you and be like, oh, whatever. They would treat it like it was a real disease and make it, treat it seriously.
Absolutely.
But because it's migraines, because they can't see the pain, because they can't see the side effects, we must be faking it. And I have seen a psychologist, because I've been told so many times that it must be in my head. I was like, you know what? Things aren't super great up there. I've dealt with mental health issues since I was 13 years old. I'm 28 now, and yeah, you know what? Maybe it is in my head. Maybe I do need to see a psychologist. So I saw a psychologist at the #1 hospital in the nation. I saw a psychologist from the Mayo Clinic.
Yeah.
And the first thing he told me was, I want to tell you this right now before we get started. And I was like, okay, what? And I had my notebook open. I was ready. I was ready to take a note.
Everywhere, so it makes me feel like I'm not the only person.
Yes, you are not the only one. I brought my bullet journal. It's what I call it. I'm a bullet journal junkie. So I had my bullet journal out, and I was ready for notes. And he was like, you don't have to write this down. I said, whatever you say. I said, I'm going to take down everything you say. And he's like, okay. He's like, I want you to know first thing. He's like that the pain you feel, he's like, it is not all in your head. And I just started crying because I was like, oh my gosh. It was such a relief to know that everyone who's been telling me that it's probably in your head, the guy who's supposed to tell me, yes, it's in your head and we're going to try to work through this, the first thing he says is it's not in your head.
Oh, that must have been like the most relief. It's like a weight off of your shoulders.
It was. It was. It made me feel, it made me feel vindicated.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then we talked about different ways to cope with the pain, different ways that I needed to learn how to adjust in my life, and different ways that I was going to have to learn how to adapt. And just, essentially he was like, you may kind of always be feeling a certain measure of pain.
Yeah.
And learn how to kind of take the good with the bad, take even the certain level of pain, and learn how to thrive even with that, And so he was like, so there's days where, we talked about the pain threshold, and he was like, so there's days where you may be at a 2, a 3, a 4, and he's like, adapt. He's like, don't push yourself to the point where it becomes a 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, don't go over and beyond. But try to find joy, pleasure, try to engage in activities that give you those things. He's like, don't give up on the activities that bring you joy, happiness, and pleasure. If anything, engage in those activities more, because the brain actually gets confused, and the pain receptors get confused when you engage in those activities.
I've never heard of that. That's amazing.
The something about the synapses, they sort of get like, I guess, I have my notes in my journals, the journal's upstairs, and it's with all the other journals. It's been archived now, but I have so many journals, they get archived, and but it's something about that. They essentially just, those neurons, they get confused. And so if we engage in activities that bring us pleasure or joy or happiness, it disrupts the pain receptors.
Oh, that's really interesting.
And so while
while
the pain may not go away completely, it will disrupt the severity.
That's awesome. That's such information.
So even something like watching like something that makes you happy, like watching a comedy show or watching a funny show, something that makes you laugh, that gives us pleasure, that gives us happiness, we're laughing, that can disrupt the pain cycle, and give us some relief.
That's so great. So as writing, or at this point you're done with writing, well, at least this book.
Yeah, at least this book. There's actually one revision that I would like to include. I feel like it would be more for the character. There's just this one change that I want to implement. I think it would just be more true to the character.
Yeah, I feel like that's always a big thought with me too. Is this like true to the character? Because you guys, you've read a little bit of Jasmine, my story that I've put in, for like workshops and stuff.
Yes.
And that's what I've been working on for, I can't even tell you how many years, this like, that she's been there and just trying desperately to come out, and it's like finally we're there. But like there are so many things that like the first 20,000 words so far that I've just kept changing, because I'm like, it needs to feel true to her.
Yep, I understand that. Oh, so much. Yeah, so much it hurts, because I totally understand that.
If it doesn't feel real, then, I feel like it needs to be adjusted and changed, and really just, it's just going in there and being like, would this be how she really was? Because again, she came up a lot of how your character came up, which was like, but what if we write from a different perspective? What if I have more of an anti-hero, like the Punisher or Deadpool or something like that? Like, what if we have a character like that and it's a female?
Yes.
Like that was huge to me because I'm like, we need to see more of these strong female leads who aren't a hero because not everybody can be the hero.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I find those characters more relatable. I mean,
because they have flaws.
They have flaws, and I understand that we need our classic, I guess, golden boy heroes, because we have people like that too, and we can't discount them. I mean, I think my husband's probably one of those characters. So, if I were to write a book on him, he would end up falling into the golden boy trope. And not that he hasn't endured his own kind of suffering, but he deals with it in a different way than I do. And if I were to pick myself as a character, it would definitely be my main character. It'd be Nyx. I would deal with it with a sword and in gore and blood, and probably not the best way of handling it. And he would deal with it in a much more diplomatic and calm and wise manner. And so I'm the anti-hero, he's the hero. So I don't know how he ended up with me.
It's because opposites attract.
Opposites attract, yeah.
It's that's what it comes down to for me, is like that kind of characterization is something that I really wanted to see for females, and I didn't feel like we had enough of it. And I also didn't want a female who fell in love and that kind of made her who she was. Is I wanted to take it away from her, and that's why she became even more so this person. So it was something that for me I felt very strongly about, and I felt very strongly about it for years. And it was a huge part of the reason why I also did the MFA is because I needed people to help me bring her out, because I know that she's there. And like I said, I'm like right at that 20,000 words with her, and there's going to be so many things that I change in between, but I'm like, I just want to give her due justice, and I want to give her the story that I truly, truly think that she deserves. And it was a contemporary piece, which is very different for me because I do write mostly speculative fiction. And I was like, all right, we're going to do this, and it's going to be great, and I'm going to struggle, and we'll just see how it goes.
You're such a diverse writer. I mean, I love your style. I loved your siren song. I don't know. I turned in my week 7 critiques late, and because I had horrific migraines during that week, and Melissa let me turn them in late. So, but I did read your story. I did critique it, and I essentially was just fangirling the entire time. So it's not, you can't really call it a critique if you're just gushing and drooling over someone's work. But it was beautiful. Oh my gosh! Like your imagery is so lush. I'm just like, oh my gosh. Like, I just want to live in the world that you create.
I love world building. For me, it's just like, it's so important. And that was something when I came into like doing contemporary that I wanted to make sure I kept, because I do feel like a lot of the times with contemporary pieces, we kind of lose that imagery because we're all living in the same world. So people are like, oh, well, I don't need to mention this because everybody knows what a tree looks like. But I don't know what your tree looks like. I don't know what your front yard looks like. I don't know what Boston looks like. I don't know what Chicago looks like. You know what I mean? Like, to your eyes, is I want to see it how you see it, because there are things that I like to keep out sometimes. So there are times where I keep out little bits and things, like maybe specific pieces of furniture if I don't feel like it's necessary, because I want my reader to be able to imagine it a little bit how they do. In their own kind of mind. But then there are certain times when I need a specific thing to look a certain way. And so I will add in pieces of furniture that have really ugly designs or smell a certain way or whatever, because I want it to feel like you're there. And everybody, they say that the nose can remember, like, I think it's like 100,000 scents.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
It's something where, like, when I say mold, you know how that smells.
Yes. Love it.
I mean? Like,
and when you describe things like that, in particular, that builds, like, depending on what you're describing, it can build tension. It can build, specifically tension, because when you're slowing down the pacing just enough to describe, like, the yard and stuff, the reader can get really excited for what's coming next. but as the picture is building in their mind, they're already thinking ahead, like, okay, what's coming? What's coming? And that gets really exciting. So you're building the world, you're building the landscape, you're essentially building that frame. And then when the action happens, that what's coming actually comes to fruition, then it's already just laid out for them. They've taken the time themselves as the reader to fill in the blanks that you may not have detailed for them, but you did take time to kind of explain, this is what the yard looks like. And you maybe brought up a tree for them and showed them the sunlight filtering in through the leaves and how the sun glitters on the dew of the grass. And so they're seeing those details, and then suddenly, like, there's a gun. And they're like, whoa, okay, I see it all. And they're, like, super excited, and they're, like, scared because the gun's pointed at them, the main character, or whatever. And it gets, like, really tense. But all that time, they were slowed down for just a second. And that's how we can, as writers, use our settings to, build the tension, and even romantic tension, and, it's, writing's just fun. I could talk about how to write, and there's this one post I saw that, I wish that in writing there's a way to use, like, what did they say, like a Gregorian choir, like, to, make it seem like it's like boom, 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 and the responder was like, actually, you can, by, like, using short, choppy sentences, by,
structuring, my favorite thing I've ever
sentence
heard.
structuring, with the, your bold, like, statements, like, quick, cuts here and there, long sentences, short ones, and I was just like, yes, all the yes to all of that.
Yeah.
Perfect response. Boom. Gregorian choir in writing style.
Yes.
Love it.
Well, Nicolette, I am so excited that we became friends, because I felt as soon as we started all kind of like having these conversations through the video discussion, I was like, I've met a kindred spirit and I really want her to be my friend. And I told Mike when you had emailed me, I was like, I made a friend at school.
Yes.
I feel like it's so hard sometimes because we are all online. So everything is kind of secondhand discussion because, like we'll post a video note and someone responds, but it's not actual communication happening at the same moment.
Yes.
So when you emailed me, I was like, I made a friend, and he was like, you're like a kid on kindergarten, like first day of kindergarten coming home, like I made a friend today. I was like, that's exactly how I felt, is I made a friend today.
Yes. And it's funny because I never like questioned whether or not like you would respond. Yeah. Because I had already felt like we were friends, so I'm so glad that you were equally excited, because I was already feeling like we were kindred spirits throughout class.
Yeah,
so.
I was like, and now I have your number, so you're never going to be able to get away from me.
I love it.
Yeah.
Perfect. Text me all day. Text me anything. Like, seriously.
Well, I wanted to thank you so much for being on the podcast this morning. I know that, you got up early and you had the kids and did all that, and then you got on here and like talked to me for an hour. So I very much appreciate it. I thank you so much. And please, if you could plug all of your stuff, tell us what your blog is, what your Facebook is, everything that you want us to know about you.
I will. Thank you so much for having me, and I look forward to listening to this and to I don't know. I was going to say something else, and I drew a blank. So I'm an absolute nerd. We're going to have to edit that out, I think. Or leave it in, so that way your viewers know that I'm a complete dork. So that's fine, too. Then they'll know who they're following.
I hope that you will be on the podcast again, because I'd love to have you.
I would love that,
so much
yes.
fun. But yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate all of that. And I appreciate all of the advice that you've kind of given and all the feedback that you've given on writing, because it's so important. And I think that especially females and females of color, I'm Hispanic, and I felt like I really wanted to get that out there. And when I was writing, and when you had mentioned that when we were having those discussions, you wanted someone to look like you, I was like, oh my God, yes. I just wanted someone to look like me.
Yes, that was a big thing when writing Nyx. She comes from, she's from the Imperio Rojado, so it's the Red Empire, essentially. And, she's of Hispanic, descent. And it was important to me to have a main character, not a side character, which is okay, but a main character who was who had brown skin, brown slash, for her, she has essentially jet black hair, because I think most of us do.
Yes.
And eyes that are like, so dark that it almost looks black. And yeah, I wanted a character who looked like me. Yeah. It was super important because I just grew up not seeing that. And it's important for me to write characters that look like the readers that will be reading my books. So it's not just Hispanic characters. I mean, I just found out recently that apparently I'm a 1/5 Japanese, which is such a cry for my soul, like of joy, because I've always felt so connected to Japanese culture. It's like a part of me always knew. And so now I feel so uplifted. Like I said, a part of me feels like I've always known. And our family has always talked about it, but they never really knew. We have a lot of family things. Anyways, and I know we're going a little bit over here, but it's just diversity is so important. I don't feel like any one particular group gets to own a story, and I feel like it's so special that it's so important that we get to open up the landscape of publishing to all groups. Yes. So I definitely feel like it's important that, and it's our responsibility as writers, and especially writers of colors, that we open up our writing for.
And I think it was very important because your kids are half, right? Because I'm half. So I'm half German and half Mexican. So it was something that was so important to me because I've been told a lot when I was growing up, like, well, you're not really Mexican and you're not really white. And I was like, well, I'm pretty sure I'm both. So
yeah, exactly.
It was something that I wanted to point out. And I also feel very connected to who I am and my culture and, just being able to be dual natured in a way, I think is so important. And so I wanted to make sure that my characters felt like that as well. Like I have a very specific idea of how my characters look because I want them to be like me, because not everybody is just one thing.
Exactly. And you're very right, and I feel very similar. I mean, we could basically be the same person. We just have two separate bodies. So.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I so appreciate it. This was so much fun, and I had such a good time, and I thank you for being on Typing When Tipsy this morning. It's more like typing when caffeinated.
Yes.
But thank you so much, Nicolette. It was so much fun talking with you. And thank you to our listeners who are just, I hope you all get something out of this because we just so enjoy talking with one another that we, hopefully we'll do it again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you would like to support Mercado Airwaves, visit us at patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves. Find us on iTunes at Mercado Airwaves. Keep up to date with the show on Facebook at Mercado Airwaves. You can see all of Nicole's work at typingwhentipsy.wordpress.com. You can follow Alex on Twitter at Mercado21Alex. Follow Mike on Twitter at mmercado2333 and on Instagram, MikeMercado2333. If you would like to support Mercado Airwaves, visit us at patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves. Find us on iTunes at Mercado Airwaves. Keep up to date with the show on Facebook at Mercado Airwaves. You can see all of Nicole's work at typingwhentipsy.wordpress.com. You can follow Alex on Twitter at Mercado21Alex. Follow Mike on Twitter at mmercado2333 and on Instagram, MikeMercado2333. If you would like to support Mercado Airwaves, visit us at patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves. Find us on iTunes at Mercado Airwaves. Keep up to date with the show on Facebook at Mercado Airwaves.
You can see all of Nicole's work at typingwhentipsy.wordpress.com. You can follow Alex on Twitter at Mercado21Alex.
Follow Mike on Twitter at mmercado2333 and on Instagram, MikeMercado2333.
What's up, friends? Mike here from Mercado Airwaves. If you missed any one of our past interviews with amazing guests like future Hall of Famer and pound for pound best fighter in the world, UFC flyweight champion Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson,
Another day at the operator to go out there and test my skill.
to award-winning producer, director, and actor Orlando Jones. Orlando, how you doing,
How
buddy?
you, sir? I'm good, brother. How you doing?
And all the other interesting guests we've had on. Joining us today is director and writer David Ferrier.
Thanks so much, brother. I appreciate you having me on the show.
MMA legend Chael Sonnen joins us today.
Keep listening to your show. This is great. Thanks, my friend.
Just subscribe to us on iTunes at Mercado Airwaves. And while you're there, please like, review, and rate us, friends. It helps so much. We also have a Patreon for anyone who would like to support the show. Just visit us at patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves and see how you can get all of our interviews ad-free and before anyone else, and how you can get your business or company spotlighted on the show. Follow us on Twitter at mmercado2333. Like us on Facebook at Mercado Airwaves. Subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/MikeMercado2333. And if you would like to see what we're up to behind the scenes, follow us on Instagram, MikeMercado2333. Thanks for listening and all the support.